how close are we to understanding exactly what happened in August last year?
The interim report sets out our findings to this point and describes how the weather at the time was significant. There was a large storm came through the anchorage at the time. It was sufficient to push the Bayesian and another vessel in the area, to push them so much that they dragged their anchors. The wind force acted on the Bayesian. It was sufficient to push it over to a degree that it was irrecoverable. It could not come back, and the vessel foundered. The crew managed to launch a life raft, and 15 people were able to get on board and were saved, but sadly 7 people lost their lives. We've interviewed witnesses, and we have gathered documentary evidence and electronic evidence to support the contents of the interim report. The documentary evidence and the digital evidence that we've got has enabled us to model the Bayesian in the condition it was most likely to have been in at the time that it foundered, and that is that it was lightly loaded, that the centreboard was raised, and that there were no sails up. So it was in what we would call a motoring condition. So it wasn't sailing at that time. When the vessel comes ashore, we aim to gather as much information from the wreck as we can and validate the studies that we've already completed. We are comfortable that the studies we've already done or had done on our behalf provide us with detail of the vulnerabilities of Bayesian in the weather conditions that it experienced. What we need to do next is to gather the physical evidence in order to validate and refine those models to fully explain it.
In your interim report, you talk a lot about the weather and the wind at that time. Were the crew aware of how vulnerable Bayesian was?
When a vessel is designed and built, it gets supplied with what they call a stability information book. And the stability information book contains information to advise the crew on how to safely operate the vessel in terms of stability. And within the stability information book on Bayesian, it detailed all of the sailing conditions and the effect of wind on them, so how much pressure the wind would exert on the sails when they were raised. It also contained conditions when the vessel was motoring, that is when the sails were not raised. Now in those conditions, the stability information book didn't carry any information of the effects of wind on the mast. So the vulnerabilities that we have identified with the action of the wind on the mast and rigging alone wasn't identified, and the crew and the owner would have had no knowledge of that. So the key message we're trying to put across in the interim report is that there was a vulnerability of Bayesian in the condition that she was in at the time of the accident, to high winds. The stability information book, which provided guidance to the crew on board, it was their Bible for assessing the safety of the vessel from a stability perspective, didn't include wind information in the condition it was, because it was in a motoring condition. It didn't have any sails set at the time.